WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by JW Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on the air. I want to thank you for being with us today. Star Communications, Channel 16, WCLN Radio. Coming to you on Tuesdays at 2:30, simulcast on WCLN. There's a rerun of this at 7 p.m. Tuesday and Thursday. We're talking a subject today that's important to everybody, and our guest is the fire chief here in Clinton, Chief Lovette, Stephen Lovette, and Captain Ricky Taylor with the Clinton Fire Department. Guys, every year we kind of need to have this conversation, and sometimes we need to have it 3 or 4 times a year. Particularly about fire safety and things dealing with dangerous things from appliances to vehicles. Chief, I looked and thought since, April 2018, you started here. 32 years of experience, Salisbury Fire Department, 1986, you joined the High Point Fire Department. You teach for the National Fire Academy, applied science degree in fire science, a number of professional certificates, and you ended up in Clinton, North Carolina.
Yes, sir, I did.
And sometimes when folks do that, me and Ricky Taylor might think, why did somebody end up in Clinton, North Carolina? But you got a lot of reasons for that. One of them was your daughter is down at White Lake.
Yes, sir.
Going into emergency services as well. So,
she is.
So thank you for being with us. I'm going to switch to Ricky real quick. I've known Ricky for decades. We used to work at the college together. Ricky worked the fire coordination and training. And Ricky, you've been involved in fire training as long as I can remember, way back decades ago. So before me today, the point I'm making here, thank you for being here, but the point I'm making, we've got decades of understanding and things that you guys have seen that unfortunately sometimes ends up with loss of life and unfortunately loss of homes and businesses. So I want to capitalize on that. I want you to help me capitalize on it. I want to start today with talking about oftentimes what you guys have seen and what we need to be aware of as we go into this season of significant temperature change. So I'll start with you, Chief.
First and foremost, it's very, very important for our aspect is if it doesn't seem like a good idea, it probably isn't. And there's nothing wrong with calling 911 if you think you need help. That's what we are here to do. We are here to help those within our response territory. We travel out of our response territory to assist other departments, but it goes back to that whole aspect of common sense. Have a little common sense. Think about what you're doing before you do it. Think about what you're doing before you do it. And I emphasize that if it doesn't seem like a good idea, then maybe you ought not do it. But do not ever hesitate to call 911. That's what we are here for.
And Ricky, I think one of the things that strikes me too is that during the holiday season, people tend to be more relaxed. I don't want to say they necessarily drop their guard, but you know, you got Thanksgiving, you've got Christmas coming up. Many people go either to the attic or to storage buildings and start pulling out decorations. And in today's world, everything is lit with something. You know, it's not a candle necessarily, but we'll talk about those later. But it's a lot of it's electrical stuff. What do we need to be concerned about as we do that?
Well, as you get into the holiday season, one of the big things coming up Thanksgiving first, you know, be here is people cooking outside using turkey fryers. They need to be aware of where they're using it, how they're using it, and they're doing it the proper way. Just be careful, you know, when you're cooking or grilling a turkey or doing whatever outside. And also need to be aware of what they're using inside, and don't bring the wrong apparatus inside, you know, to cook. If you're using a fireplace, you know, have it checked. If you're using gas logs, you know, have it checked. And that sort of thing. Just as the chief said, be kind of aware of what's surroundings and use a little common sense in what you're about to do. As we get on into the Christmas season, You got Christmas trees, you got Christmas decorations. Don't overload your circuits. If you got a live tree, make sure you keep it watered. And just be aware of what's going on around you, and don't overload the circuits, and have a good season.
Chief, you off air a while ago, we were talking about you were talking about an experience of what not to do, underline twice, not to do with a turkey, a frozen turkey, and hot grease. I thought that was interesting. Share that with us and kind of get that. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. That sounds bad.
Well, a number of years ago, I had the opportunity or inopportunity to respond to a call for service to reported house fire. We get there and extinguish the fire and realize that it's a turkey fryer inside the gentleman's garage, which was attached to his house. I started our investigation and asking questions. He had taken his turkey, did not let it thaw out. Mistake number one. Had filled his turkey fryer full of oil up to the top. Mistake number two. He didn't measure how much oil he would need for his thawed turkey to displace inside of his turkey fryer. You just can't put a turkey inside of a vessel full of oil.
Physics, basic physics.
Basic
two
physics.
things can occupy the same place at the same time.
Exactly. And again, it goes back to oil displacement. Well, not having common sense or not thinking through things real thoroughly, he takes his frozen turkey, drops it into his turkey fryer that is at 280 some degrees to get his oil to boil so he could fry his turkey. Well, where does all of the oil go? But on the outside of the turkey fryer. And most of your turkey fryers are fired with a propane burner underneath. And all of that oil spilled over the side and was ignited by the propane burner. So there is your heat source, your fuel source, and your ambient oxygen source. And it began a rather volatile fire experience. And it was almost to the point of an explosion. It ignited the rest of his garage. He had fire that extended into his kitchen because the door was open. He burnt about 30% of his house that they had to leave the residence for a time being till he could have some repair work done. He did a major amount of damage by just not thinking.
Ricky, do you see things like that? I mean, just looking back at your experiences, does that kind of thing happen, as the chief kind of pointed out, just where people don't think about it, or just maybe it just don't somehow come together for them? Or?
I think a lot of times it just doesn't click. They got so many other things on their mind. They're having a crowd over. They want everything just right, and they got all this other stuff on their mind, and they just don't put it all together.
A lot of folks that pick up this show obviously live in rural areas, and the difference in town where you got houses in close proximity, it makes it even more perilous in that situation, because you're talking about possibly literally creating a flame that could engulf 2 or 3 more houses, or if it's a duplex apartment complex, even more so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
so it gets a little more concentrated.
Yeah, just like this last weekend with the wind blowing like it was, makes it more successful to travel from one house to another. What
goes through? I know this time of year where most folks are thinking about Christmas presents, and we were talking about the turkeys and all this kind of thing. But for a firefighter and a fire chief and a firefighter and people that's looking after, when you have a little quiet time, what goes through your head? What are you anticipating? What is that moment that you're thinking, God, I hope we don't have that happen?
We look at calls for service from our past. Our brain is a great big slide tray, and we're bringing up things that have happened in the past and what we did right, what we did wrong, what we can learn from, and utilizing those lessons learned into that next call for service. And we look at situations that have happened with the public. We have apartments here in Clinton. We have apartments that are fully sprinklered. We have apartments that people have taken houses and made apartments out of them. And what can we do to provide a safer environment in that aspect. What fire prevention program can we get out there? We install smoke detectors. We'll come out and do a home safety inspection. And very fortunate, Captain Taylor does an incredible job with providing fire prevention materials to the schools. And he works that from about 3 different avenues, and I'm very proud of that. So we start educating young. And a lot of it goes back to that education aspect. We look at calls for service, what we've done, what may be a trend within society, and what we can do to prevent that trend from having a catastrophic effect here in Clinton.
We talked a little bit about, off camera, also a little about LP gas versus natural gas that often fuels stoves and even heat systems in homes. Do we have both of those fuel sources here? Yes,
sir. Yeah, we have natural gas in the city, and most of the rural is propane. So we have both.
Which concerns you more, natural gas or propane, or is it equally?
I mean, both of them, concern us, I guess, pretty much equally, because you've got very similar dangers, with either one.
And those are the kinds of things that if you address those concerns, it's not just necessarily seasonal. It can be year-round that there may be an issue.
That's correct. The biggest thing, if somebody feels like they've got a issue, they need to have it serviced and keep everything serviced and checked on. And if they smell something or out the ordinary or whatever, have it checked.
We're coming up on a break, and I want to take just a couple of seconds to say when we come back, I want to follow up on the LP gas thing. Then I want to move to particularly some of the safety issues as people transport items around. Oftentimes I'll hear folks that's going to somebody's house and they're carrying some food or something, and you end up with some pretty severe burns and that kind of thing. So ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're talking with the fire chief and Captain Ricky Taylor. We're talking about things that you need to know to think about as you enter this holiday season. We'll be back in a moment.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We Should Know is on there. I'm JW Simmons, your host. We're talking about fire service, things that can actually hurt you, even kill you, and destroy your property. Today, we're talking with the fire chief, Chief Stephen Lovette, and Captain Ricky Taylor with Clinton Fire Department. Gentlemen, we talked a bit about different things at the beginning of the show. Ricky, one of the things that you've been doing for years and been engaged in is an education process that starts in the very young strata of life in trying to get children to understand what they need to do. And unfortunately, as we kind of alluded to on break in a brief conversation, is that this material sometimes is good for the parents as well. So tell us what's going on with schools and what the fire department's doing there.
Yes, sir. Thank you, JW. But basically, we've got a program that we started almost 30 years ago. And I'd like to mention United Way. They're our partner in this, as well as the Sampson County Fire Association. But United Way handles most of our funding. But we started a program that we're in pre-kindergarten through the fourth grade in all the city and the county schools, and we furnish fire prevention literature, each year, for these kids. And most of it's in a workbook format that they can carry home, show their parents. And also the fire department, whose district that the school's in, they will go out and teach the kids and show them the equipment and that we use, during our service. And this has been, we think, it's been real beneficial, and we just appreciate what the chief lets us do and what United Way has done for us, over the years.
So Chief, it sounds like to me a lot of what Ricky's been doing over the years is not only good for the fire department, but it's good for everybody, if nothing else, in a cost-saving trend, because that's that many trucks you don't have to roll. That's that many people that don't have to address a fire and all those kinds of things.
It is very much a cost-saving aspect. That one little bit of education will take care of 3 potential calls for service, whether it's dictating an exit drill in the home or an EDITH program, or teaching a youngster how to dial 911 and when it's appropriate to dial 911 and how to report a fire. All of those items are what we consider community risk reduction. Not only are we here for fire, but we are here to reduce the risks of potential hazards within our community. That's what I'm really proud to say. Captain Taylor just takes that task on and shoulders that burden. And he is the best that I truly have ever seen in 30 years. He does a lot of it without being asked and without any kind of compensation. He doesn't want to thank you. He doesn't want certificates. He doesn't want acknowledgement. He just likes to see the kids and provide a safe place for him to live, for the citizens of Clinton to reside, and to take care of kids. That's what we're supposed to do.
Ricky, do you find is there a need, or do you do the literature in both English and Spanish? Or do you see more people, Latino-speaking people, that need that translated?
We're getting some of it now in English and Spanish. It's getting more readily available in Spanish than what it was a few years ago. So we are using that, as it's available. And I think that has been beneficial.
Chief, you talked a while ago something that struck me too. You talked about the fuel sources, about the oxygen and something that actually burn, and all those things that go involved in that. And I remember in past years talking with Ricky in educating firefighters. You got to have, three sources. So when we go into this kind of season where you've got a lot of wind, and this is a rural area, so you guys respond mutual aid to county and to county back and forth. Do you have a concern when we see real dry weather, especially cold, dry weather, with folks deciding to have a little campfire outside, or we're going to take a few trees and burn them, Ricky, and that kind of thing? What do you say to people? Not only be cautious, but check with somebody and let them know you're going to do it, or what?
If you're going to have a fire outside your house, there are specific guidelines you have to follow. Contact your local forestry office. We have one here in Sampson County. You can contact them through Sampson County Emergency Management, and to be able to make sure you're doing it the proper way. And if you start looking at having a bonfire, with things that are cooling off now, Halloween's past, we're getting into the winter, into the fall, people will want to burn leaves in their ditch. Be very mindful when you go to do this. Inside the city of Clinton, we have a no burning ordinance. You cannot dispose of natural debris in your ditch. You can't have a trash barrel. Those are against our ordinances. In the county, you're allowed to burn, but just do it with some common sense. Check your wind direction. Check to make sure there's not a burning ban on. And you would think, well, this is November, there wouldn't be a burning ban. You look at the moisture content of what you're fixing to burn. If it's been dry, or the wind is moving, or the wind is moving across into a forest area. One simple improperly discarded cigarette butt can light many acres. Smokey the Bear said it the best. Only you can prevent that forest fire. So check with those that are in control of those aspects. Check with the Forestry Service. Make sure that it's okay for you to do that.
When we look at things like that, and I think you made a very good point with just a small spark from a cigarette or something, we're talking millions of dollars that could be lost, especially in forest fires now with timber and not only homes, but just simple burning of woodlands.
That's correct.
Even millions of dollars in resources. It takes personnel. It takes trucks. It takes dozers. If the fire is severe enough, they will put an aircraft in the air to drop water. That takes two. You have a spotter plane and a drop plane. So look at the resources it takes for one simple, improperly discarded cigarette butt and an accident.
Who absorbs the cost of all those resources? If it's somebody's property that is burned, does that property owner have to pay for that? How does that work?
They don't bill for those. Those are taken care of through your state taxes. But, it depends on if you are burning within the legal limit of the law or you are burning outside the law. They can issue you a citation with a monetary fine, depending upon the severity. If
you're liable in the situation, then that liability becomes inherent.
It could be up to a certain point.
And I think that's kind of good to know, Ricky, in a situation where people kind of abandon thinking seriously about it, and all of a sudden they destroy, it might not be their property, but they destroy somebody else's property.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that person didn't have insurance to cover it, they might end up in a liable situation.
And
correct.
It could be a civil suit.
Let's look at, and so make sure I can get some of these things in. When you look at the holidays and the troubling things, we've talked a little bit about Thanksgiving and cooking situations. Ricky, we talked about LP gas. I want to go back to you with LP gas because I know you have experience not only with stoves and such as that, but you also fire service. Is there any concern that you have with LP gas or natural gas, because we see so many news reports in Texas and everywhere else, other states, where houses have just been demolished? And how does that happen?
Well, a lot of it is people being a little careless. We had an incident several years ago, most people may remember, right here on Lisbon Street. We had a house that exploded. All the walls were gone. The front wall was out in the street. And that came about from where the tank was filled up. There was a leaking line. The people came home. They smelled a little something, didn't think about it. And they lit some candles and
to try to get rid of the odor.
Try to get rid of the odor, some incense. And then when it started getting a little cool, they started closing windows. And when they started closing windows and then the gas built up, it's when it exploded. Luckily, they got burnt. None of them were victims, but some of them got burnt pretty good. But we've had a few incidents in the city and the county, where we've had some houses explode. And the biggest thing is use a little common sense. If you smell something out of the ordinary or you don't think something's right, have it checked.
The part of having it checked, Chief, sometimes falls into, I guess, people's financial picture. You talked about pictures in your head. It falls into a financial picture, and folks say, well, it's going to cost me $75 or $100 for somebody to come out here and check this. I smelled that last year, but it didn't matter. I used it anyway, and finally it went away. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about that we got about a minute here before we go to the next break.
5 dangerous words. It'll always go away. But if you think it's an issue and you feel that it's gas, you call 911. That's one of the services we provide. We'll come out and walk through your residence. We have gas meters that we are trained to utilize that are calibrated weekly, that we can come out and walk through your residence to ensure that you don't have a gas leak. And then if all else fails, you contact your local gas company provider, and they should be able to come out and check it as well. But if you have to pay $100 for that gas company to come out, it may be worth the peace of mind.
Absolutely, and that's a great service. I was never aware that service was available, nor even that you guys, have you been doing that for some time, or is this a kind of a new thing?
Yes or no, it's something we've been doing for a while.
So all they got to do is call the department, or if it's
Just
like late at night, they can call
911. We don't advertise our business office number because we don't like to receive calls for service that way.
Sure.
We would rather have people call 911 because somebody is there to pick up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and then they'll properly dispatch us, and we can answer the call for service.
Great piece of information. We're going to go to break. We're going to come back. I'm going to pick up from there, and if there's some more things we can add to the gas thing, because that's intriguing, Ricky. We'll be back in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're going to come back and continue this conversation about fire service issues. Call a friend. Stay tuned. This could be a life-saving moment for you. We'll be back in a moment.
Clinton Appliance and Furniture values your business, but we also want you to feel safe and stay healthy. So if you don't feel comfortable shopping in our store, we encourage you to shop online. Visit our website at www.clintonappliance.com. Browse our selections, ask questions, and get quotes. You can even set up deliveries and purchase by phone, all from the comfort of your own home. Clinton Appliance and Furniture.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us. We Should Know is on there. We're coming to you Star Communications, Channel 16, WCLN Radio. We're talking with the Fire Chief, City of Clinton, Chief Stephen Lovette, and Captain Ricky Taylor. Guys, we're having about as many conversations off air as we are on air. The LP gas thing that we just went to break talking about kind of continued on the break there for a moment. It seems that there's a lot of interest in LP gas and natural gas, Ricky, because apparently, and I don't know whether there's any numbers or not, but there's a lot of folks uses, I would say, in rural areas, LP gas for everything from cooking, as we talked about, to fireplace logs and those kinds of things. Without disparaging the LP gas businesses, is that something that requires a different level of sensitivity and understanding that kind of moves that needle of fire prevention to a kind of a red zone, and that people need to really stop and understand what they've got in their house?
Yeah, I mean, they need to be aware of what they have, but also the biggest thing I think is if they don't think something's right, to have it checked. If something seems out of place, something doesn't smell right, the equipment's not working properly, they need to have it checked.
Carbon monoxide, or which is it?
Monoxide.
Monoxide detects certain things. Tell us how that works with gas, and if it's a gas leak, if you can smell it, is that something that detector should be letting you know is wrong?
Basically, I mean, carbon monoxide you can't smell.
Oh, okay. So it's almost the reverse.
That's right. The gas itself, they put a actual something that smells in the gas, where you can smell it. Mm-hmm. They actually put that in there. But where your carbon monoxide comes from most of the time is something that is burning improperly. If the flame's not right, the smoke if it's smoking, it's putting off. But carbon monoxide normally comes for when something's not operating properly, and that's when it creates the gas that you can't smell or whatever.
So, Chief, I'm thinking as Ricky was talking about it, it just struck me is that a lot of the gas fireplaces and those kind of things are there during the holiday seasons for the ambiance, for that background kind of view. It's nice, warm, cozy kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But it's also could be easily, if it's not handled properly, a deadly situation.
It can be a very deadly situation if it's not vented properly, if it's not the proper types of logs that are installed, or you just don't have it properly maintained. And we were discussing, off the break of why would you do this or why would you do that? That system is normally under pressure. And those are the things you need to look at. People can bump lines. Things will deteriorate. Plastic or rubberized lines will deteriorate. Washers or fittings may go bad. Guys may bump them, or they may be under the house for some other reason. But with coming back to that CO, that's the reason we have CO monitors and utilizing those. Carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless gas, and it is a product of combustion. And just exactly what Captain Taylor said, and I emphasize it, if it's not burning properly, you have the potential for a larger than normal carbon monoxide off-gassing, if you will.
Does it concern you guys when you're responding to a structure fire? And you may know, I guess I'll ask this question this way. Does it bother you if you don't know what's at that particular structure that you're responding to? If you don't know there's a gas tank there, if you don't know there's what connections in the house? I mean, I'm just, it's kind of like one of those things, Ricky, going into a house burning. Back during the days when we were at the college and you were doing training, I was a little bit hesitant to get up, put a suit on and go into a burning fire. I mean,
well, when you're actually going to a call, you listen to what the dispatcher tells you, and what they know is what the people told them. Mm-hmm. And then you run scenarios kind of through your mind while you're en route, about, well, what am I going to be facing? Will I face this or face that? When you get on the scene, you do a walk around and you look for LP tanks or where the electrical lines are, if there's a natural gas meter there. And then you can kind of size up, what situation you have, and can cut those things off or deneutralize them before you actually send somebody in.
Good information. I want to move to some of the holiday stuff now because as we talk, time goes fast. But the holiday checklist most of the time comes down to in several areas, but one of those areas is trees and decorations. Some people each year will do a live tree. It's just a tradition. The pine odor in the house. I mean, it's not Christmas unless they do pine tree. Others do, of course, the other kinds of decorated trees. Talk to us about hazards of both, because both of those trees are lit. Both have, should I say, fire going to them, I guess. So talk to us about some of the dangers with those trees and remind us as well.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that with the live trees is to keep them watered.
Yes.
You need to water them probably every day because it's amazing how much water they will, consume. And the other thing is the type of bulbs that you put on them. You don't want to use the bulbs that get real hot because that'll help dry them out worse. You want to stick to an LED type lighting, if you can. And then just don't overload your cords. Make sure you don't have too many things plugged into the same outlet, And that gets back to the artificial trees is the biggest thing. You just want to make sure the wire's in good shape. They aren't frayed. You don't have you don't have bad spots in the lighting. And if you get a flicker or something, or it kicks the breaker, you need to figure out, what the problem is. And like I said, don't overload it.
Does trees these pre-lit trees that Ricky just referred to, Chief, that come in from different countries, and you can see the label wherever they're made in another country, do they have certain fire code requirements that they're supposed to follow, or does that not even make sense because they're made in another country? They might follow none of the codes we have here, I guess.
Well, all of them, before they can be set out for consumers for us to buy, they have to be tested by underwriters laboratories. Okay. That's the little tag you see on the end of the strand of lights that says UL. If it's tested by UL, make sure all of the lights you buy are tested by UL. If it's a pre-lit tree, it's tested by UL. Christmas is about tradition, and we have lots of traditions. I have a strand of the large big bulb lights that belonged to my grandparents that I remember as a child. I don't put them on my tree anymore, but I do have the opportunity to decorate the mantle with it. And I'm selective of when I light them and when I don't light them. But when it goes back to those pre-lit Christmas trees, make sure you get one that's been tested properly by UL. That will save you a lot of headache and heartache if something would happen, because that way it's been tested properly, and it truly is safe to use.
So even if you're buying a new tree, you should look on the box for that underwriter laboratory seal.
Correct. You should.
So you mentioned lights and the way we mount lights. Both you guys know that you've seen lights outdoors on houses where they're strung from one place to the other, around windows, just unbelievable ornaments everywhere. And it's amazing to just drive through communities, and it's beautiful to look at. What are some of the hazards with that, Ricky, as people decide, well, this year we're really going all out and string lights up?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing, if they're doing outside lighting, they need to make sure that the light is suitable for outside use, that it's not an indoor, and make sure it is a lighting that is for, be able to use outdoors. It's more waterproof. The other thing, make sure when they string it, they don't damage the light, the cabling, nick it, where water could get in, and be mindful of how they hang it. And then again, as we've mentioned already, make sure that they don't overload the circuit, as they keep stringing these lights out. Some of them will tell you can hook 2 together, 3 together. You need to make sure that you don't overload your power source.
Can get a little more, I guess, excitement. The more lights you put up, the more you want to keep plugging in.
Yeah.
If that circuit breaker breaks, the first thought is to go throw the circuit breaker and try to see if it'll work again. Is that a bad idea?
In a lot of cases, that's a bad idea until you get it checked out. Most houses now have ground fault breakers that, if they will kick, and easier than just a traditional type breaker. And but the biggest thing, if they can see the obvious thing that may have kicked it, if not, they need to get somebody to check it out.
And preferably an electrician, somebody knows what they're doing, that it's not going to come in and beat it with a hammer and it appears to be working.
That's right.
Or if you're going to attach string or several strings of lights, make sure you use a regular commercially bought store block. And then you say a store block, well, it's got 3 or 4 different receptacles in line, but it also has its own breaker on top of that. And that way that may prevent some electrical issues.
Well, we're gonna go to break. We're gonna come back, and there's just so much stuff that we need to talk about. I know we're not gonna get it all in this last segment, but I'm gonna ask you gentlemen to kind of think about this when we come back. I want to hit those key points that probably better than anybody else what we really need to zero in on to save somebody's life during this holiday season. So we'll be back in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with the fire chief. We're talking with Captain Ricky Taylor. We're talking about things that typically in the past they know that will save your life. So call a friend, get a notepad out, make a note. We'll be back in one moment to finish the conversation about fire safety during the holidays.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Again, thank you for being with us. Thank you for your comments. We ask you to continue to send your information, comments, recommendations to weshouldknow.edu@gmail.com. That's weshouldknow.edu@gmail.com. You can always send us a little handwritten note to Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina, 28328. The show is simulcast on WCLN Radio, 2:30 each and every week. The show is simulcast on WCLN Star Communications Channel 16. Many people will say, well, I didn't see it. Well, guess what? You can see it again, 7 p.m. Tuesday, Thursday on Channel 16, Star Communication. A lot of folks will say they heard the show, then decided they would sit down and look at it and kind of get some of the visuals, because oftentimes we'll do visuals for background drops or background scenes that maybe obviously you're not going to see on radio. So you might want to pick that up from there. We do appreciate WCLN mentioning the show. Robert Stroud with Boogie Shoes Radio Network. Thank you for commenting about the show and getting the word out of programs we got upcoming. So today we're talking about something that is life-saving, that's important to you, and that's fire service during the holiday season. We have the fire chief with us, Stephen Lovette, Captain Ricky Taylor. Guys, we've been over a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things that I'm sure that we could have done. Ricky, remember those classes we used to do at the fire departments over the years? You could have 3 or 4 hours and then come back the next night and have another 3 or 4 hours. We could do that with this information. Help us not miss anything during this last segment that folks really need to know? And I'll start with you, Ricky.
Okay. The biggest thing, be aware of what's going on around you. Use a little bit of common sense. Don't leave your car running in the carport with the doors closed. When you're cooking that turkey, be aware of where you're cooking it at, what's around you, that you do it the proper way. Thaw your turkey. Don't have too much oil in the pan or in the pot. And when you put that Christmas tree in, to make sure it's not overloaded. If it's a live tree, make sure you keep it watered. But just keep an eye on what's around. If you see something that doesn't seem to be right, have it checked out. And I'll throw one more thing, with your smoke detector, with the time just changed, make sure you change your batteries. If you got a carbon monoxide detector, make sure you change your battery if it's got it. And, just kind of think before you do. And most of the time we'll do the right thing.
Where should I put a carbon monoxide detector? If I got a gas fireplace or if I got a gas stove, should I have more than one, or do I place it high, low, nearby?
Well, carbon monoxide normally settles. So, you want it as low as you can within reason. Some of the ones are in the ceiling. They're made to be that way, and all. But carbon monoxide normally settles, so the lower the better. And I would think it would depend on, as far as how many you need, is where your different appliances are located. Mm-hmm. If you got an all-electric house, you don't have to worry about carbon monoxide. But if you're burning fuel, some type of fuel, then you need to be concerned with it.
Chief, what's your thoughts on what we might have missed or needs to be covered?
Not only the aspect of everything Captain Taylor mentioned, but that risk reduction. Look at what you have in front of your stove. Where are your handles on your pots? Small children like to do what?
Yeah.
Reach up and grab the handles. Hot water burns just like fire. It truly does. So be mindful of the little hands or the little people you have around the house. Look at trip hazards, fire hazards. Where are you putting electrical cords? Have that forethought to think, maybe I don't need to run the electrical cord across the hallway. And if it's a non-UL listed cord, look at replacing it. Buy that UL approved cord. It's had a safety test done to it for a reason. Be very mindful if you're outside. Make sure you're only utilizing lighting and cords and those things that are approved to be utilized outside. If you're hanging lights from your gutters, make sure you're utilizing proper outdoor lighting. If you're putting decorations in the front yard, make sure you're utilizing proper outdoor decorations. When decorating your house, be very, very mindful. This is a great season of tradition, and a lot of us burn candles in our house. Be very, very mindful. Be very mindful that we don't have little hands that are going to be up and around an open flame. Make sure that where we put the candle, that it won't have a potential of coming in contact and starting a fire, whether it's in the bedroom or it's in the kitchen or it's in the den. People burn candles for the ambiance and for the novelty and for the aroma. Mm-hmm. Just make sure you're doing it in a very safe manner.
Does it concern you guys that we have a lot of older homes that the wiring after 30, 40, 50 years may be degraded some, and some of the things we're talking about has more potential of concern with those homes?
Yes, sir. I mean, that's always a concern when you got an older house. More wood houses. Mm-hmm. You take some of the real old ones, fat lighter. Yeah. Ignites easier. But all those are concerns. It's limited to what we can do about it. As far as, but the people, need to just be aware, like I said, of surroundings, and if something doesn't seem right, have it checked out.
Hazards when it comes to chemicals. I know that's something the fire department has looked at for years. I think it dates back to a concern when Bhopal, India. But when we look at that, is there specific things that folks need to be aware of as it relates to potential hazardous chemicals around? Again, we talked a little about candles. There are folks that like to have like live lantern fires and that kind of thing.
Be very mindful of cleaning solutions. And in today's society of disinfecting more than we did 2 years ago and utilizing specific type of wipes or a cleaning material, be very mindful if you start mixing cleaning solutions. They are known to form an asphyxiant and can displace oxygen in your lungs. So those are the things, if you're cleaning your bathroom in preparation of family coming over and you want your house clean, of course, be very, very mindful of what you're mixing. Utilizing them in a very ventilated area. Turn on the bathroom fan. Turn on the ceiling fans if you have them. Just make sure you're utilizing it with some common sense.
And store them properly.
Yes.
Away from the kids.
And preferably somewhere in a locked cabinet or, like you said, out of the reach of children. What are the concerns, safety concerns, and you mentioned children, Ricky, safety concerns, because the fire department oftentimes gets the call. EMS may roll on it, but the fire department may get the call first if somebody's injured or hung up somewhere that they shouldn't have been riding a particular device they got at Christmas, or now the big thing is drones flying in the air and all this. There's so many things now, I guess, to injure people. What concerns you there that people need to be aware of?
Being able to watch your children, you're as their parent and being a parent, even though my daughter is 27 years old, I'm still at some times, whether right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm in charge of her safety.
Yep.
It's programmed. It is programmed as a parent, and Captain Taylor being a parent, he'll tell you, no matter how old they get, we'll still be the parent. Be the parent. Make sure you take into account for something that what if. We are in the business of what if. What if that 4-year-old or that 5-year-old that gets that new ride-on toy for Christmas? Be mindful of where they're riding it, in the front yard, the ditch. Take a look at it. Look at things and see the entire forest and not just a couple trees. Look at the big picture. A
lot of electric motor vehicles now for children being sold. Some of them are gas. We see a lot of that. What comes to your mind, Ricky? Because I know we share being grandpas. So
well, the biggest thing, and it's been recent, the last few years with the, as we talked, lithium-ion batteries. When the hoverboards came about, they had quite a few issues with the hoverboards. The batteries catching on fire in people's houses. When they were charging the batteries and all. So you just need to keep your eye open and pay attention to what you're doing and read the instructions and make sure you're charging it properly, using it properly, and don't overcharge it or whatever the instructions say for that particular equipment. As far as like gas engines, you don't want to fuel them when they're hot. So if you got a motorbike or something, and it's been running half a day, you don't want to, spill gas on the hot engine. So
the excitement of the moment, that's been done many times.
That's
I'm sure.
Right. But just, like I say, be aware of what you're doing and use a little common sense and read the instructions.
And Chief, you made this comment earlier. It was built around, and when in doubt, stop and call somebody. Don't just proceed to do it. Correct.
If it doesn't look safe, if it doesn't look right, stop and think about what you're doing. And that's hard to get people to do, especially with kids. We want to make sure our kids are happy. We want to make sure our kids are having a good time. We want to make sure, but take a look at their safety. And it really goes back to that aspect. We're in charge, and we have a civil responsibility to take care of each other. I'm not going to let you cross the street in front of a car.
That's right.
So it goes back to just being aware, situational awareness. watch out after the person standing next to you. We're supposed to anyway.
Absolutely. I want to thank both of you for taking time to be here today. I know you've got busy schedules. Look forward to having you back anytime, not just during the holidays. All of these tips are very important.
We
Thanks
thank you
again
for having us.
Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. We look forward to seeing you again next week, and may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host JW Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.